So are you saying that like if the therapist is not validating them, then they're skeptical of the professionalism of the therapist?
That's what the therapists are saying. That's what the plant-based meats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I became a vegetarian, I was just eating all sides.
Okay. Yeah, no,
I
that
was
makes
like,
sense.
I was like, this is not healthy. I was eating all sides. I was eating fries, macaroni, like
Love me some
all the
macaroni.
sides. Like, and it's nothing but like,
All right. Welcome back to the Getting It Wrong podcast, where we create a safe space for getting it wrong because getting it wrong is the first step to getting it right. I'm Gabrielle,
I'm Morgan.
and we're so happy you've joined us today. We're going to give a little recap of our last episode and then jump into our topic of the day. Actually, I think are we going to change it up a little bit? We're not going to jump into our topic.
True.
We're gonna bring it back to our previous seasons where we had like a hot
Mhm.
topic, and then we talked about like a wellness topic.
Yes.
They both,
So,
yes.
mhm.
No, I was just gonna say that they both might be geared towards wellness, but one is geared towards like um current conversations that are happening.
Exactly.
And another, our second topic is just something that we wanted to talk about, regardless. So,
Exactly.
you want to take us
Yes.
into it?
Yes, so let's get into it. So today, I know everybody is aware about like social media and how there's just like an influx of information, especially when it comes to like mental health, and people are just becoming so aware. And I came across this article today. It was on Psychology Today, which Gabby, by the way, recommended that we start looking at that website because they have a lot of good articles. So just so happens I came across this one, and the title was Have We Become Too Aware of Mental Health? And I just found that really interesting.
I was gonna
So
say,
let's
are you
just
asking me?
I mean, yes. What do you think before we get into the article itself?
So I think yes and no. I think yes, we have gotten a little bit too exposed because people are using everyday mental health terms terms and
Hmm.
terminology in everyday conversation when we don't necessarily know where those terms have derived from and their true
Hmm.
meanings. And I think that can muddy the waters a little bit. We're giving things meanings that don't
Mm,
necessarily go with those terms. So that's why I say yes. But
right,
I also say no because I think it's very important that us as humans are more in tune with our mental wellness and our mental health. And I think the more we get exposed to it, the better. But at the same
mhm,
time, we do live in this information age where it's very easy to become misinformed. So I
right.
believe that if we are exposed to it, but there's some type of way that we can make sure that we're getting the correct information, I think that's maybe a good middle ground. But
Girl,
yeah,
yes.
those are
That's
my
and
thoughts.
that's no, that's exactly it's funny because that's exactly how they answered that question in the article. Like
Mhm.
the psychologist was like, yes and no, verbatim,
Oh
just like you
wow.
said. Right.
Okay, let's
So
go.
and I 100% agree. So they talk about how it's awesome, it's amazing, it's a wonderful thing that everybody is gaining this openness when it comes to mental health, whereas in the past there hasn't always been that. People are okay with talking about it, whereas like our parents and it was kind of like frowned upon, or it was people
Taboo.
were ignorant to it
Hmm.
and they just called everybody crazy that didn't fit into a certain mold.
Hmm.
So I think people are just being more open. People are talking about it more, and that really is a good thing. However, the article mentions that they are like everybody is coming to a point where we're not just being more open and aware, but sometimes we can become hyper aware. So, like, what's the difference, right?
Hmm.
Um, hyper aware to your mental health um, is when you are, let me see. It says you can be hyper aware when normal emotions like stress and anxiety and sadness are misinterpreted as psychological problems. So I know you can
Mm.
probably, like, you hear that and you're like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Um,
Hmm.
like they give an example and they say that psychologists have noticed that patients are labeling, like, for example, they're labeling anxiety. um, well, the labeling of anxiety may affect self concept and behavior in a self fulfilling manner. So basically, it's kind of like, like when you read like Greek mythology and they talk about like Oedipus, and he learned that this terrible situation is going to happen, and he did everything he could to prevent it and to be aware of it and to make sure he was, like, just taking the steps for it to not happen, to the point where it fulfilled the prophecy. I think to an extent, people are like, I am paying so much attention to my emotions. I'm learning from social media specifically. And they're like, I'm going to know when I'm like anxious. And then they start feeling something and they're like, this is it. Well, it's like, yeah, you can kind of get to a point where you're overdoing it a little, if that makes sense.
Can I
So,
say something about that?
mhm,
Okay, so I don't know our listeners or if they're familiar with like the seven universal laws or anything of that nature, but there's this hermetic principle where they say where your attention goes, it
mhm,
grows. And
mhm,
I do feel like that's what's going on with like mental health at this point in our time.
yeah,
It's like people are paying so much attention to mental health and like all these topics. I feel like people are, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you said. It's like
yeah,
even if they might have some characteristics that are similar to these things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, all of that, people are
mhm,
wearing these things that like as like a badge of honor, as if like it's not
yeah,
something that can be curbed or something that can be worked on or something that can possibly change. It's like, I have this and this is a part of my
yeah,
identity. They're making it a part
yeah,
of the identity. And I feel like that
exactly.
it's a fine line. It's a
Mhm,
fine line. And people are putting so much attention on these things. I feel like it's growing the characteristics of
yeah,
whatever. No, I don't want to say disease. What's the word I'm looking for? Whatever mental issue that they feel like they're having.
exactly.
So
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah,
that's what I
you're
had to say.
no, you are 100% correct. And that's pretty much what the article is just highlighting. So like in addition to that, they say like the self-fulfilling behavior, it can potentially worsen the symptoms. And then it may lead to behavioral avoidance. So like where you're like, no,
Mm.
this is just my problem. Like you're saying, like this is just my issue. And it could even amplify it to
Wow, I
where
could have wrote this article. I'm just playing.
no, but and it's like it's something you're like everybody is probably kind of like getting, like people are probably like catching on to it, but
Hmm.
it's important that they're bringing this up because we really need to be aware, not hyper aware, but aware that this can be an issue. So, in addition to that, people are going to their like therapist, their psychiatrist, or what have you, and they are basically they're becoming skeptical of like the professionals when they are not validating like their self-diagnosis in a sense.
Mm.
So I think that's
So,
dangerous too.
so are you saying that like if the therapist is not validating them, then they're skeptical of the professionalism of the therapist?
That's what the therapists are saying. That's what the psychiatrists are
Okay.
saying, that there's become like a distrust because people are going into it and they're like, no, this is my problem and I want you to help me with this problem. And they are going into it wanting their feelings and their situation validated. But because psychiatrists are taking their time, and they may even say, hey, that's normal to feel that way, let's
Hmm.
work through that, instead of, oh yeah, you have this diagnosis.
Yeah, okay.
So
I definitely see that. I had a
mhm.
situation. I'm gonna bring it up. It was with a friend of mine. If you're listening to this friend, I'm not saying any names, but it's something that goes so well with this topic. I feel like I have to say
Mhm.
it. So, they were telling me about a situation where they felt like not even a situation, just something that's going on in their lives where they feel like they have this issue to where they feel
Mm,
like it's something like so wrong with them where they're like, if I feel
mm,
like I'm not helping someone, then I feel like something bad is going to happen. Like if I don't help them with this problem, like something bad is going to happen and it's negatively affecting my life. And I'm telling them that like that sounds like that's a common issue that a lot of people have when they have like people pleasing problems.
mm,
And they're like,
mhm,
no, like I feel like it's something else, like something chronic, like something like they just felt like something was so wrong with them. And I'm like, friend, like this is
mm,
I know so many people that have the same
yeah,
issue. Like it's not something
mm,
completely
mhm,
wrong with you. Like this is something that can be worked on. This is something that it does not have to define you for the rest of your life.
yeah,
Basically, like, and I think that's something a lot of people have been going through now, like with the learning about mental health and all these things. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. They're just like stuck in their position and they want their problem. And it's crazy because like what you're describing, it's like I feel like what we're describing as a whole is like almost like hypochondriacs. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
happened in the medical field, but now in the mental health field. I
Okay.
think it's kind of, and I wouldn't say hypochondriac, but I think that same idea of just people wanting their hypothesis to be validated.
And which is understandable, especially when you think about the health field in general. Like
Mhm.
people don't are not trusting of doctors because
Yeah.
of some doctors aren't taking what you're saying seriously and you're like, "No, I know something
Mhm.
is wrong with me." So like I can understand where people are coming from, but it's a delicate dance. It's a fine line and
It
you
really
really have
is.
to make sure that you are looking at things from both sides to make sure that you are in fact
Mhm.
not trying to diagnose yourself with something that is something that can
Yeah.
be easily even not if easily but it can be something that can be worked on and something that can change. It's not something that's going to follow you and affect you
Yeah.
negatively for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think basically like some of the takeaways is I would say to make sure that you are paying attention to what you are being fed with social media because in addition to that they're saying like social media is like inflating the awareness which we
Hmm.
know but it's being like algorithmically fed into people so when you think of like your algorithm and you start hearing this thing and then you're repeatedly hearing it because that's how the algorithm works
Hmm.
then it's like you're being fed this. So pay attention to what you're being fed. And that works with a lot of things.
Everything.
Spiritually, you gotta
Mm.
really pay attention to what you're being fed. And yeah, just make sure you're paying attention to that. And then also try to like balance it. So now that you're aware of like all of these mental health issues and you're being more aware of yourself, be aware that this could be an issue too. I think
Okay.
just to balance it out, just be aware, like, yeah, I could be dealing with this, but take the time to let the professionals do their job.
I 100% agree. And we always talk about, like what you said before, control the algorithm, reprogram your
Hmm.
algorithm, notice what's
Yeah.
being fed to you.
Yeah.
I could go on and on about the algorithm. I don't want to go too deep into it right now, but I do want to I do want to put out that we need to pay attention to the algorithms not only with us, but if we have children, we need to make sure we know what the
Yeah.
algorithm is feeding them as well. And I'm going to leave it right there for now. We can take that into a whole different episode, but I just wanted to say it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
say it.
100% agree. And I think the last thing I want to say about that is that I felt like when I came across this, I was like, yes, this is something we definitely should talk about because we, on this podcast, we talk about mental health so often that I just wanted to make sure we're not a part of it. Like, if, because we just had episodes about like,
Hmm.
mental health issues not too long ago. So,
Hmm.
I think it's our responsibility, and I think honestly, other like people with platforms of any form, especially if they talk about mental health on a regular, they should be, like letting people know to make sure you're putting it in a professional's hands. Um, yeah. and not just solely listening to people that don't necessarily have the professional background.
Yes, 100%, because we are not licensed professionals. We probably should have said that at the beginning, but
Girl, y'all know.
disclaimer, we are not licensed professionals. I mean, y'all
Yeah,
should know, but
you
for
should.
legal purposes.
Yeah, for
We are
real.
not licensed professionals, but thank you guys for listening to our first hot topic of season 4. Brr, brr,
Yeah.
brr, brr, brr. And now we're going to jump into our actual topic for today, our main topic, which is what we got wrong
Mhm.
in our 20s. Last time it was workforce edition. This time it's what we got wrong regards to health and
Mhm.
wellness. Get into it. I know, Morgan, you just got done talking to us about that amazing article, but if you could jump in and tell us what you got wrong in your 20s
Girl.
regarding your health and wellness.
Girl, where do I start? I feel like this is one of the things like that we're talking about now. Like I definitely found myself like hyper fixating on because I really do like learning. And I know Gabby, you're the same way. Like I really like learning, especially when it comes to like different mental health issues. So I find myself like self-diagnosing. That's definitely one thing. But also when it comes to my 20s, I feel like I could have done a lot better with not doing like the diets versus changing my lifestyle. So
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
you when you like want to get like on a healthier path, I would do like little quick things like, for example, I remember I wanted to lose a few pounds, and I, instead of like changing my lifestyle as a whole, I decided I was going to work out every single day for 2 weeks straight.
Okay.
So, like, just really overdoing it.
Yeah.
And the whole, I feel like the whole point is that you have like this overall goal to become a healthier individual. And instead, even if you do want to lose weight, like, and you do, I'm not saying don't do that, because I mean that can be helpful if you have like a short-term goal. However, I think my goal was to overall be a healthier person, but I thought if I, just sped up the goal by like working out every single day for 2 weeks, and overdoing it at that, and it being mainly cardio and not educating myself on what the actual workouts were. I think that that definitely did me no good. So I would say now that I'm in my 30s, I do have a regular workout routine. Because when I did that quick little every day, every single day for 2 weeks, like the weight came right back. So
Yeah.
now that I am being consistent with like both eating healthy and working out, I feel like I see like, I'm not gonna say it doesn't fluctuate, because I think that's natural. But now I feel like I see like consistent changes and I feel better as a whole.
Yes, I
Yeah.
100% agree with that for sure. Um, I'm trying to think if I had similar things going on with that when I was in my 20s. I feel like when I was in my younger 20s and my older 20s, I was very more disciplined than I am now when it comes to my diet. That's when I became
Mm,
a vegetarian. Well, actually, I became a vegetarian in like the summer of 2011, maybe. So yeah, I was super on it when it came to like my diet and things like that.
mm-hmm.
I definitely remember doing intermittent fasting, but that was like more of like a lifestyle thing as well.
Oh, that's what's
Um,
up.
but I know when I was in high school, I was definitely on the diet kick for sure. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing a little bit of everything. So I know that wasn't the way. That's not the way to go. It didn't work.
Girl, and it's funny you bring up the vegetarian thing. I was a
Hmm.
vegetarian for a couple of years.
Hmm.
And the way I did it was not okay. So and this was in my 20s.
Hmm.
So we're back at this.
Hmm.
Basically, I, instead of like, because I didn't like tofu or meat substitutes. I've never been a fan of like the plant-based meats and stuff.
Hmm.
So when I became a vegetarian, I was just eating all sides.
Okay. Yeah, no,
I
that
was
makes
like,
sense.
I was like, this is not healthy. I was eating all sides. I was eating fries, macaroni, like
Love me some
all the
macaroni.
sides. Like, and it's nothing but like
Yeah,
It
no,
was
that was an
not.
issue for me as well. I think I started when I was like 18, 19. And when back
Mhm.
then there was like no real knowledge, no real options outside of like just going to the grocery store and actually getting the individual ingredients and like making something. There was nothing
Mm,
outside of
that's
that when I
true.
became vegetarian. So when I first started when I was a teen, I was honestly eating like pizza and Qdoba every day. And I was in college too. So it's like
Yeah,
pizza and
this
Qdoba. This what it is
this
what
was
it
getting me
is.
nowhere.
That's where the
Like,
freshman 15 comes in.
girl, getting
So
me nowhere.
yes, diets and not actually making lifestyle changes, it's a
Mhm.
no-go. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else?
Girl, that's really it. Really just like getting my like taking the time to really learn like what learn my body and making sure that I am like just paying attention. Like now, I pay attention to like when I feel bloated and what has gotten me there. Cause sometimes, like during your menstrual cycle, that can make you feel bloated. But other
Hmm.
times I realize like when I eat too late at night,
Hmm.
girl, it's not good for me. Like, and if I'm not walking regularly, like I can do um like workouts, but for whatever reason I noticed like for me walking on a regular basis keeps me from being bloated. It's like a digestion thing, I think.
Oh, yeah, that definitely helps with digestion, especially if you go on a walk after you eat. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
Favorite things.
Yeah.
Like I feel so good afterwards. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, and speaking of like quick workouts, I'm definitely doing like a quick like 10-day workout for my birthday. We're going to be going to Houston and Dallas,
Ooh.
and I'm definitely putting in some work for a short amount of time just to make sure body is looking right, body's looking fresh, body is looking tight.
Okay.
So, I mean, like you said, if you have like a little short-term goal, like it's fine, but if you really want to see things that last, it definitely has to be a lifestyle change and not
Mhm.
something quick.
Mhm. Absolutely.
But if that's all you had to share, I can go ahead and jump into
Mhm.
mine. And for me, what I got wrong in my 20s when it comes to health and wellness was not making sure that I prioritize the top three things in my life of wellness, like mental, spiritual, and physical. I feel
Mhm.
like it was either one or the other that made itself a
Mhm.
priority in my life. And I realized that my mental health and everything in my life flows so much more freely, flows and I'm such a happier person when I'm making sure that I'm making time for all three of these things. So it could
Yeah.
be something as simple as like mental, like consistently seeing a therapist, spiritual, consistently going to church or reading your Bible or just getting some type of word, and physical, making sure you're getting daily exercise. It could be a walk, it could be a quick little 5 to 10 minute
Yeah.
workout in your room, like anything like that. But just making sure you have something consistent in your life in those three areas that is like the key to that was is the key to my happiness. Like that's how I know that I'm really doing well when I'm prioritizing those three things.
Amen.
Yes. So like in
Amen.
my
I
20s, I
completely
remember
agree.
like okay, were you gonna share something?
Yeah, I was just saying I agree. Yeah, I definitely noticed the difference in it's like a decline if you're not paying attention to all of them. So I definitely agree. I noticed that in myself.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that every single one has to be super intense at the same time. Just making
Right.
sure you're at least doing something in all three of
Mhm.
those areas on a consistent basis. I
Mhm.
promise you that your life will improve. I promise. But another thing that I wanted to add was not getting enough sleep.
Oof.
So, sleep was something that I always had issues with. I would always go to sleep, wake up tired. It felt like no matter what. And I realized that a lot of people go off like the 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. But if you're not feeling well rested after that, you might actually need more. You might
Mm.
actually need more. There's actually a study. I don't know if I read it on NIH.org. It's like News and Health or something similar to that, where they're like women on average need on average like 10 hours of sleep
Mm.
in order to feel completely well rested compared to the average male.
On
And
average, that's crazy.
yes, and it's like a lot of the things we've talked about this before. A lot of the studies that are out are geared towards males.
Yeah.
Women are not. the subject, they're not the test subjects when it
Mhm.
comes to a lot of these studies. So a lot of us, a lot of women are operating on a schedule or operating on the mental capacity, operating on
Mm.
mental ideologies that do
Yeah.
not benefit us to the fullest. So I
What a
realized
disservice.
what a disservice, but it is the part of the world that we live in. We live in a world
Yeah.
that is ran by capitalism, patriarchy, racism. This is
True.
America. So we have to make sure that we are doing things that work best for us. And as a woman, I mean, some men probably have the same issue as well, but just make sure that you're getting the right amount of sleep in order to make sure your body is well rested, because not getting enough sleep can have detrimental side effects. It could actually
Yeah.
contribute to some of these mental health issues that you feel like
Yeah.
you're having if you're
Mhm.
not getting enough sleep. So if you feel like you need some more sleep, get it. And then tell me if your mental health improves.
That's like one of the number one things. If I'm noticing that I'm feeling anxious or irritable, I realize like, I probably haven't had enough sleep in the last few days. And then I'll get some good sleep, girl, and wake up and be like, oh, I feel like a whole new person. So yeah, I
Yes.
100% agree
And I
with that.
realize that 10 hours is my number. So
Really?
10 hours is my number. When I get 10 hours of sleep, I'm like, wow. But it is rare that I'm able to get 10 hours of sleep. So whenever I have the opportunity, I try to make sure that I get that 10 hours because I
You
know
gotta
that my
reset.
life, yes.
Mhm.
I just got 10 hours last night. So that's why
Amen.
I'm full of energy today.
Amen
that
to that.
that's why I've got energy today. And so just make sure you're getting enough sleep is all that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, just to bring it all back, things we felt like we got wrong in our 20s when it comes to health and wellness is making sure that you're making lifestyle changes, not quick diets,
Mhm.
prioritizing your mental, spiritual, and physical health, and
Yeah.
not getting and making sure that you're getting enough sleep because a lot of us are not, especially if you're a
Yes.
woman. And sharing, we wanted to share these things with you because we feel like if you implement some of these things, it'll help you get it right. And you don't have to learn the hard way like we did.
Yes. Yes. Take the easy way out, please.
That's the best way to learn. Learn from other people's mistakes so you don't
For
have
real.
to.
Mhm.
But that's all that I had to share today. So we would love to
Amen.
share and talk with you guys all night, but it's getting late and we gotta go.
Yes, ma'am.
Love you
Bye.
guys. Bye.